RPGs are known for having what many like to call the holy trinity of classes, a dynamic used to underline the necessary foundations for a successful team, regardless of what situation they'll be taking on. This trio goes as follows: tank, healer used interchangeably with support, and DPS. Said convention has been implicitly stressed in almost any game in the class-based system and is often used as a benchmark for understanding a proper balance of classes. In order for your party to withstand enemy fire, you need a tank. In order for your party to survive long stretches of combat, you need a healer. And finally, in order for your party to actually defeat the enemy, you need damage. While some game theorists have disputed whether such dynamic is actually necessary for a well-designed combat structure, it's widely agreed upon to be at the very least a good rule of thumb to follow. As a turn-based RPG, Honkai Star Rail adheres to this practice rather faithfully, just in its own language. The game's cast of characters is divided into three categories: damage, support, and sustain, wherein any unit who deals the bulk of the team's DPS falls into damage, whatever form that takes. Units who amplify their party's strength and/or diminish the enemies fall into support, and units who can heal or withstand enemy pressure on behalf of their team fall into sustain. Ideally, the class trinity stresses that all three aspects of it carry equal importance, but empirically, at least in my eyes, the support category tends to have the most influence on a party's success. Having made videos on damage dealers and sustain units, continuing on with this little mini-series I have cooked up, we'll be talking about support characters next, and how I feel like there's a pretty concerning issue with the direction of this archetype, especially in recent versions. Elaborating more on why support takes precedence over damage and sustain, since I just made lunch, let's use cooking as an analogy. Think of tanks as the cook/tableware you use, from your plates to your cutlery to your cutting boards, pots, pans, utensils. Obviously, without these, you'll never be able to prepare the dish, just like how you'll never complete the game's content if your team can't last 5 seconds. That being said, while cookware can definitely vary in quality, at the end of the day, it's a yes or no question. Do you have it or do you not have it? Think of damage dealers as the food and ingredients itself, the meat of the party if you will. All the cookware in the world doesn't matter if there's no ingredients to cook with, right? Just like how all sustain in the world doesn't matter if you can't actually damage the boss. Your party and the enemies will reach an impasse if you don't have damage on your team. Now think of supports as the seasoning, the condiments and spices. Your salt, pepper, sugar, onions, garlic, turmeric, oil, chili, sesame, whatever. Without these, it doesn't matter how good the raw ingredients are. They will never taste good without proper seasoning. Okay, that's a hard statement. Sometimes I love plain rice or a slice of toast, but just play along, you know where I'm going with this. You can make a wonderfully delicious meal with average ingredients and average cookware, so long as you know how to season. More than that, seasoning is extremely versatile. Not every dish needs beef or pork, but you can bet your ass every dish needs at least some kind of seasoning or condiment. I can find 100 things that will taste better with some onions added to it. My point is, supports complete the team, especially in Star Rail. Sustain units do vary in efficiency, but ultimately if they can keep your team alive, they can keep your team alive. Whether Japard, Aventurine, Fushuan, Luocha, Huohuo, Gallagher, the difference is negligible. Damage dealers, yes, there's importance on what kind of DPS you bring to the fight. Some bosses are vegetarian, some bosses want steak, others start with dessert. Why the hell am I going so deep into this cooking analogy? Having said that though, if your unit can deal damage, that's all that matters. Whether Akron, Lunai Danheng, Jingliu, Ratio, Jingyuan, Argenti, if they can kill enemies, they can kill enemies. What makes them able to do so, of course, are the supports. It's not who you have, but how you use them. How you use them is determined by what supports are brought alongside them. Using the wrong support for a team will result in a significantly less efficient run as opposed to using the right one. A major facet of Star Rail's experience is team building, with there being a multitude of game modes, each with their own distinct win conditions and scenarios, enemies having specific mechanics that incentivize one playstyle while discouraging others, and of course each opponent's elemental vulnerabilities. Combat can become pretty complex, pressuring you to have a diverse array of units who can account for many scenarios. This can be intimidating for players who might feel overwhelmed by the need for so many characters, given they can only account for so many situations. Supports can circumvent this by enhancing a team's combat pressure to either allow them to brute force their way through any gimmick or obstacle using sheer power, or artificially enable them to adhere to said gimmick or obstacle by supplementing them with a supportive faculty. For instance, you might be facing a boss weak to imaginary fire and ice, but the only DPS units on your account are Blade, Seela, and Jinyuan. However, you do also happen to have a Silver Wolf on your account, who can implant an additional elemental weakness to that target, enabling you to comfortably take on that boss despite lacking the original requirements it demands of you. Supports can augment a party's existing capabilities or compensate for their deficiencies. With enough extra juice, even Yanqing can become endgame viable. An example of enhancing one's strength is Bronya's famous synergy with Seela. Every additional turn afforded to the latter can actually be 2 turns courtesy of a reset mechanic. An example of compensation would be Lunai Danheng, who struggles with uptime due to how SP exhaustive he can be. Sparkle alleviates that by supplementing him with the ammo he needs. Without supports, there's only so much a damage dealer can do, and while naturally you can't have one without the other, most of the time it's the support that makes a damage dealer, not the damage dealer that makes a support. Genshin players may remember the notorious Power 5. 5 4-star characters with the same value if not more value than 5 stars due to how many parties they can be slotted into and to great effect. Coincidentally, Bennett, Qingqiu, Sucrose, Fischl, and Xiangling are all supports or sub-DPSs. A potential negative consequence of this is that in light of their dominance, they indirectly push other units out of the market. Logic dictates why bother going for X character when you already have Qingqiu, Bennett, or whoever. Engaging's defense, with there being central combat structures like elemental reactions or the game being real-time action, thus having many variables to account for, players may develop a preference for other units, perhaps as a result of them feeling better to use or having a more generous margin for error. As a turn-based game, while StarRail can conceptualize external scenarios to encourage use of different units, it doesn't change the fact that combat is ultimately very simplified. There's no playstyle, it's just pressing E, Q, or 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. Characters live and die by what they can and can't do. That's just how it is in turn-based games. This brings us to the focal point of the video. For most of version 1, supports have established themselves in their respective niches. Some niches are more valuable than others. Asta's a speed booster. She can vastly increase the tempo of your party, making her invaluable for speedrunning, especially if you field her in lieu of a sustain unit. Tingyun made a name for herself as indisputably the best 4-star character to date. Her attack and damage boost coupled with their battery properties are critical for many teams. Pela is their debuff specialist. She can increase the damage of her party by shredding the entire enemy lineup's defense, so on and so forth. While you could make a case that Bronya and Tingyun can fit into many parties, thus pushing out the others, these two are still limited in some capacity, and have managed to stay like that for quite a while. The next high-profile support to come out was Silver Wolf, a powerful and versatile debuffer with the unique ability to artificially implant vulnerabilities on enemies, effectively letting you bring any DPS you want to a fight, regardless of element. Though on paper such talent is applicable in a myriad of situations, Silver Wolf is ultimately a niche character, not trespassing on anyone's territory all that much. Later we had Topaz, who specialized in supplementing follow-up attack teams. Basically up until version 1.6, StarRail supports have managed to stay in their lanes, ensuring each one can be very powerful without monopolizing the game. This trend was broken with the release of Ranmei in 1.6, bringing the furthest leap in supporting capability yet. Bullet pointing what she can do very quickly, Ranmei gives everyone unconditional bonus damage and weakness break efficiency. While Bronya also has an all damage boost effect on her skill, not only does it affect just one party member, but it also lasts only a single turn. Whereas Ranmei is a self-contained 3-turn buff, her team can act 5 times or 5,000 times, and as long as it's within 3 of her turns, they can take advantage of the sweet damage buff for every single action. No small amount either, and max break effect is 68% bonus damage. Ranmei also gives all-type res penetration for her entire team as well as speed for the entire team, in addition to a plethora of supplemental weakness break related things. Her buffs and supported capabilities are so agnostic that she can literally slot into every single team in the game. Whether hyper carry, double carry, damage over time, ultimate damage, follow-up attack damage, SP heavy teams, every single team imaginable. Specialists like Silver Wolf and Bronya can outperform her in very specific circumstances, but what makes Ranmei more valuable overall is that she's a universal support. She can work for more teams. Nay, she can work for every team, whereas Bronya, Silver Wolf, Pela, and even Tingyun may not. As we'd soon realize, this wouldn't be a one-time occurrence. The next version after came Sparkle, another support with extreme buffing potential that can work for many teams. Her skill is almost identical to Bronya's in what it's attempting to do, giving huge bonus crit damage to a single ally and virtually granting them a full turn reset almost every time. On top of that, just by being present, the max SP stockpile you can have increases to 7, and every time you consume SP, your entire party gets bonus damage, amplified even further with their ultimate, which can also generate 4 SP immediately. Prior to Sparkle, SP conservation was of utmost importance. A character's value could significantly increase if they were SP neutral or better yet SP positive. Sparkles essentially threw all of that upside down by making teams go from heavy SP consumption being a negative to heavy SP consumption being a positive. Skill points are a universal mechanic. There's not a single relevant unit as of version 2.2, with the nano system not based on SP. Keyword relevant. Arlen Mains, I apologize. I wouldn't say Sparkle is necessarily as all-encompassing as Ranmei, but she comes damn near close. The only team she might not support as efficiently would be double carry dot teams, Kafka Swan to name one, and even then if you don't have anyone else, Sparkle can still supplement that team by letting you spam skills for days while boosting everyone's damage over time through her talent and ultimate, albeit not with her skill. Bottom line, Sparkle does qualify as a universal support and a damn good one at that. Around the advent of Sparkle is when I began to get concerned over how supports were turning out. If you think about it, loosely speaking, Ranmei's like Tingyun, except the former can buff the entire team instead of just one, minus the battery of course. Sparkle is like Bronya, except the former can give extra SP on top of that. Supports are beginning to one-up each other, even sustainers are doing the same thing. Ho-Ho is Locha, who can also battery and increase attack. Eventually is Japard, except he can do damage and give buffs. To be fair, they're not one-to-one comparisons of each other in the most literal sense. I'm not implying there's no scenario where a supposed inferior support can't be used over a superior one, but when picturing all circumstances and all combat scenarios, you'll find more reasons to want to use the stronger one, causing the weaker one to lose market share. As you're well aware by now, Robin's the first unit to come out in 2.2, and she continues the trend of doing quote-unquote everything. Her skill is basically a carbon copy of Ranmei's skill, bonus damage to the entire party that counts down based on her turn. It trades the higher ceiling and break efficiency for consistency, a flat 50% damage at rank 10. Her taunt gives 20% bonus crit damage to the entire party. Again, you have free buffs just by being present on field, attributes that aren't present on day 1 supports. Then a trademark, or should I say copyrighted ultimate, is a total party-wide turn refresh that gives bonus attack to her party and bonus follow-up attack crit damage. Furthermore, she adds bonus physical damage to each attack from her allies. The vast majority of units benefit from the bonus attack, and obviously everyone benefits from a party-wide turn refresh. You can use up everyone's turn for that cycle, then cast Robin's ultimate, and it's as if you just went. In the speedrunning department, Robin's a direct upgrade to Asta, and it's not even up for debate. Robin gives bonus crit damage to everyone, bonus regular damage to everyone, bonus attack and follow-up attack crit damage to everyone, and a full party-wide refresh. The crit damage on follow-up attacks can only be utilized by those with follow-ups, but she has enough all-purpose buffs to be considered a universal support, making her the 3rd consecutive universal support we've gotten, and by far the best facilitator for speedrunning for every team in the game. For some players, this can be seen as a good thing. Honkai style is advancing very quickly in character and power scaling, with the need for a diverse army of units being more paramount than ever before. Players, especially free-to-plays, might struggle with the pace of progression, what with all the new units they have to pull for and gear up. In that sense, having universal supports is a good thing, as that's one less thing they have to worry about. But from a balance point of view, I don't know how to feel about this direction. Ranmei, Sparkle, and Robin are beginning to remind me of the Power 5 in Genshin, where they're just so good and so efficient it beggars belief that anyone would prioritize alternatives. Now I understand that not everyone has all 3 of these supports compared to everyone in Genshin having the Power 5, but these kits are, frankly speaking, overloaded. There's nothing wrong with having a few all-purpose supports, but they're not jacks of all trades, they're masters of all. Whether necessary for the sake of taking on Star Wars' rapidly increasing difficulty or not, I don't think it's healthy for Hoyo to be so flippant about giving every new support everything. That will cause non-all-purpose supports to immediately fail on arrival unless they push the envelope that much further, but doing that, however, exacerbates power creep even more. For example, if they want to make a support that behaves like Sparkle but is for damage over time, they'll have to give massive numbers to justify spending for what is essentially a copy of Sparkle with a slight variation. That's actually what they had to do with her to make her stand out over Bronya, give Sparkle a higher ceiling. Granted, if they're doing this on purpose, then more power to them. What worries me is if they're not doing this on purpose. If Star is projected to power creep, then by all means they can keep doing what they're doing with supports. It's a necessary evil, but if this is unintentional, then making supports who can do basically everything will come at the detriment of character variety. At the risk of sounding like a doomsayer, if they keep this up, Starl will soon have their own Power 5 situation where Ranmei, Sparkle, Robin, and 2 other supports will take over the entire meta, pushing everyone out of relevance since you have no reason to use the others over these 5. Even if Hoyo tries to make specific combat scenarios, they cover so much and give so much that the only ones who can compete against them are each other. I also personally think it's somewhat lazy. I really enjoy supports like Silver Wolf, Asta, Pela, and Bronya because they're specific, challenging the player to figure out who is the best choice for what scenario and weighing the contributions of each support. With the new supports, it just feels like Hoyo slapping on total damage, all-type res pen, SP positive uptime, AoE buffs, AoE debuffs, and stuff like how they do with Yu-Gi-Oh cards, where you can't be targeted or destroyed by battle or card effects, can't be kaiju, can't be hand-trapped, completely immune to everything. That's the impression I get from these units. They just do everything. It simplifies the game, which is convenient, but I can imagine players intentionally not wanting these units just to feel some semblance of challenge again. The same way Genshin players stopped using Zhongli because they felt like he made the game too easy. What do you guys think? Do you agree that supports are getting a little too nuts, or do you think this does more good than bad for Star Wars metagame? You're welcome to share in the comments. For now, if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and why not check out my other meta discussions if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.